All right. This one I'm going to talk about because it kind of came up in conversation on Discord yesterday. Um, that touched on a pretty controversial subject because I see things obviously a very different way on this particular specific issue that was brought up, even though it's really more about the larger kind of context. Um, and it's really more about like, what is it that makes you individually happy and what right does anybody else have to say about how that works, right? Now, what sparked this was one of the members of our philosophy group. She posted a an advertisement is what it is, and it's pretty clear what it is, but it looks like a social media post um, where the girl says, "I was denied for GLP-1, meaning Ozempic, because I'm not obese." But I joined Start Willow, which is a website that is one of those pharmaceutical sites that is a little more like gets around the legalities of it by just basically going, yeah, sure, you sound like a candidate or whatever. uh, got a small semaglutide dose that I used for 6 weeks. I ate whatever I wanted with no gym. I lost 15 pounds, feel amazing, and I wish I had known sooner. Okay, and it shows her stretched out in this pool. Okay, I'm looking at it right now, and the girl is very thin, and this the picture's been doctored too, so I think she looks a little thinner in the picture than she is, and she's very stretched out, so she very much is, you know, elongated as it is, right? I have a feeling she'd be a little more normal looking in the picture if it hadn't been edited, and if she was in, standing erect as a normal human being would. Um, but of course, the concept is this is so messed up. And so I asked, why is it messed up? And the response is, let's find it here. It's an advertisement that you should have this level of thinness be your goal, and that you should eat what we want and not exercise. Health is about food monitoring, moving our bodies. Advertising to women to make them feel shame about being a healthy weight, taking medication when you don't have a medical condition or actual issue, and talking about the ultra skinny stuff, in particular the stuff that's going on in Hollywood where Ariana Grande, boy, her and I don't remember the name of the girl that's with her in Wicked, but they look like skeletons dipped in wax. They clearly are not eating as much as they should, and they look like it on the red carpet, which has been an issue throughout Hollywood for a while up until fairly recently when the body positivity thing came along, which in and of itself was an interesting movement because that got real quiet once semaglutide came on the market for the average person to take. Now all of a sudden, being larger is not cool anymore, apparently, and we shouldn't be so worried about that anymore. The acceptance of that kind of thing, right? So I recognize that it is a marketing thing, and I understand where she's coming from about how girls are marketed to. Trust me, I have a daughter. I know what the media is doing to those kids and how the marketing basically preaches that you're never good enough, you're never attractive enough, you're never smart enough or whatever. But if you buy this product, you'll get a little closer, right? But the thing about semaglutide, okay, is in general there is an understanding, right, regardless of the body acceptance movement, okay, which I think is kind of shady in the first place, because there's a pharmaceutical argument that can be said, well, yeah, get as big as you want, and that's good, even though we all know it's not healthy to be super overweight, because you're going to probably have diabetes and other health conditions that we can make a lot of money on in the future, right? That's how I see that issue, is that pharma is always selling you something that's going to make you ill so that they can profit off of your illness, okay? But of course, semaglutide is an expensive medical medicine. I wouldn't say it's experimental, but it's definitely relatively new. That is offering a solution to that, right? So we wanted you to get big. Now we want you to get small again, right? So we give you a pill for every ill, whatever it happens to be. I'm very skeptical of this. However, In our society, in American society in particular, when you look at the obesity rates, America is extremely out of the ordinary with other countries, particularly in Asia. Asia does not deal with obesity as an issue. Why is that? They have as much food as we do. They have access to sugar and to starches and everything else just as much as we do. So why aren't they all obese either? Right? Well, we know for a couple of main reasons. Anybody who is familiar with this kind of stuff knows that high fructose corn syrup is not the same as sugar. It is an incredibly refined, crazy product. As it is, refined sugar is already bad enough, but at least it's relatively natural. Corn is not sweet by nature, not really. They derive this kind of almost a petrochemical. If you really think about the fertilizer they put in to grow the giant corn and then to squeeze it down and to make it corn syrup, this is a highly volatile substance to be putting in your body, and we're putting it in everything in this country. Sugar, if you look at the backs of the boxes, because I go through this anytime I go through keto exercise. I'm comparing products that look very similar, they taste very similar, and the caloric content between the two is wildly different. And usually it has to do with how much sugar or corn syrup they put in there, right? So, as it is, unless you're real careful, it's hard to avoid this stuff, and it's not good for you. And a lot of countries just don't allow it. They just straight up don't allow this stuff in Europe and stuff, right? But because we have a huge corn lobby here, we had high fructose corn syrup and everything. It's only because we have our crackpot HHS director, Robert Kennedy Jr., who's the conspiracy theorist that everybody loves to hate. Broken clock is right twice a day. We know that fluoride is a bad neurotoxin that we just dump in our water because industry convinced government that, hey, this is good for your teeth, so they don't have to deal with this waste product. They just dump it into our water and say it's good for you. And you get a lot of apologists too. Oh, fluoride is great for you. Well, yes, fluoride is great for your teeth. It is bad for your brain, right? So you get this obvious lie that is being told to us by the government. Anybody who knows anything, who read the studies and stuff about this stuff, and I only read the aggregates, but I get the message. This did not exist in the water up until the 20th century. We didn't need it before. Suddenly we need it now in our water supply? No. Stop dumping shit in our water and telling us it's good for us. No way. Chlorine, maybe, because it kills bacteria. Even then, chlorine's not good for you either. I have water filters in my house to get that stuff out of the water that I drink for that very reason. I don't want to drink a bunch of chlorine either, and it's bad here. First thing I noticed when I moved to Charlotte is the smell of the water, man. And it's fine; it keeps the microorganisms out of there, but you're a microorganism too. You got microorganisms in your gut and stuff. It's not good to put in your body. And you could feel the difference. When I put a filter on the house, when I bought that house, I put a big inline filter in the house, and I felt the shower water come out. And when it cut over to the stuff that was filtered, it felt different, way different. The water was way softer. You absorb that through your skin and stuff, right? So putting stuff in the water is not great. I don't like the fact that they're putting that chemical in the water and telling us it's good for us. And then just saying, oh, well, look how much more healthy your teeth are. Yes, oral health increased, but so did Alzheimer's. There's a link, my friends. Same with aluminum. But anyway, so we don't trust the stuff the government tells us. The food pyramid at the bottom are grains and corn, all that starch that we subsidize. And then you have vegetables and then meats and then sugars and fats or whatever. But really, anybody who diets knows it's a food trapezoid. You cut those two top off and you just go meats and vegetables, then you get healthy. But they're telling you the base of your food supply, the base of what you eat should be bread. That's what the government has told us when we were kids. So we know that's horse manure too, right? So we get an HHS director who tells us, yeah, we're not going to allow corn syrup and stuff anymore. We're going to stop that. And we know, okay, for all of his craziness, this is something that I know I wanted. I don't think we should be putting this stuff in our water. I don't think we should be putting this stuff in our food supply. I'm glad to see it go. Okay. But corn syrup is a big one. In fact, in general, GMOs is a big one. And then we eat highly processed bread with boric acid and all this other stuff. You ever look at bread that actually is like yeast and like just regular dough, like in Europe? It's this kind of crunchy, hard substance on the outside, and it's all bubbly and stuff, and it's hard to cut through or whatever. Very, you can have softer loaves and stuff like that, but it looks different. Here, it's this flat white, just smooth, perfect surface to put your peanut butter and jelly on. It's like it looks great, but it is so removed from what it originally was that it's probably not good for you either. It's not great. But anyway, we have these highly refined products in our food supply, and they spike our blood sugar like crazy. Diabetes is out of control in this country. Type 2 diabetes, which is onset. You can avoid that type of diabetes by not eating stuff like that, you know? But they're putting in our food supply, it's everywhere, okay? So when I read an ad that says, I ate what I wanted, okay? What that means to me is she was probably eating too much, first of all, because this stuff makes you hungry because it spikes your blood sugar and all that other stuff. But she didn't have to worry so much about eating only the broccoli and all that other stuff and go through the labels and all that other stuff. She just had a lowered appetite. And just through the nature of that lowered appetite, she was able to lose the weight. She didn't have to go and work out in the gym, eat normally, and then go work out like crazy at the gym either. It's basically what she's saying. Now, I have gone on a weight loss journey myself. I know what it's like when you hit those last 10, 15 pounds. It gets really hard. It's really hard to watch your diet and to work really hard, work out constantly. The best shape I was in my life, I was 210 pounds. I was 37 or 38 years old, 37 years old. I could start to see my six pack. And I was lean and muscular, boy, and I was filled with energy. But I had to be real careful on how I was eating. And I was working out like 3 hours a day. I was going to the gym, I was training for my black belt, and I was teaching kids. It was 3 hours of my day, most days of the week, sweating like crazy. And that's as low as I could get. And as soon as I stopped doing that, I started to shoot up another 10, 15 pounds. Okay. And even then at 210, I still wanted to lose another 10 or 15. I could have gone down a little bit better. I was still 12% or 15% body fat. I wasn't a skinny man by any means. And another thing is the BMI, right? She says, I'm not obese. I'm obese according to the BMI. I am until I get to about 235, I am obese according to the BMI. Obese means something to me, and while I could stand to lose a few pounds, I am by no stretch of the imagination obese, okay? It's just that's how it's calculated with no factor into your genetic disposition, your heritage, your what you're eating, how much you're working at. Muscle content's a big one. It's not as big as it used to be, but there's a lot of muscle here. That's counted as weight against you. Only when you get the calipers out or whatever, when you actually measure the actual body fat percentage, is that's really what you should be looking at. The BMI is junk. So she's saying, I was able to lose these 15 pounds, and I finally got to a place where I'm happy. Okay. Now, Ozempic is an interesting thing because people judge this stuff on a moral basis. They judge weight loss on a moral basis. They don't want you to get bypass surgery. Understandable. I think it's kind of psycho to have your stomach clamped down or whatever the hell it is that they do to do gastric bypass, because you're messing up your body with a surgical implant to force it not to eat as much food as you want to eat or whatever. Okay, still it's effective for those who really need to lose the weight. Okay, all right, okay. And then there are other different types of surgeries and medications and stuff, but they're always very judged very much like in it from a puritanical manner. I see it a lot. Well, you didn't do the right thing. You didn't start eating correctly and exercising. That's that the Puritans say you have to eat right and exercise. That's the only way you're allowed to lose weight. And a lot of times, the people who are passing this judgment are in a healthy body range, weight range themselves. They themselves work out regularly. They themselves eat a whole bunch of, they spend a lot of time searching through the store and they cook their own meals and stuff like that. Not all of us have the time and the luxury to work out like Jane Fonda and eat Betty Crocker meals with perfect, health benefits. A lot of us are working 10, 12 hours a day and are just lugging our way home, you know? So Our food supply is jacked up. The food that's easy to get is jacked up. It's usually cheaper. You go to the grocery store, vegetables are way more expensive than bread. Anything that's on the outside where the fresh stuff is always more expensive per calorie than the stuff that's in the aisles. And you see, I remember watching, it was either Super Size Me or Fast Food Nation. One of the outtakes was just following this family of four, and the guy's just saying, "Yeah, I'm not buying this cauliflower because it won't fill the kids up like this pasta will. I can get whole meals of pasta for one head of cauliflower because we don't subsidize vegetables here. We subsidize grains and stuff that stay on the shelf filled with preservatives and stuff. Now we can, but we preach a morality about our diets and about our working out. And the people who preach those moralities are the ones that are dedicated to it. And they see a value judgment. Oh, she didn't work out and she ate what she wanted, but she lost 15 pounds. She is bad. And that is messed up. And I don't agree. I just don't agree. Okay. She found a medicine that helped her more easily navigate the system in which we're living in, and it made her happier to be in that situation. Now, I think it's fair to look at the result and say, okay, what happens when she gets off that drug? Does she rubber band right back up? Okay, well, did that really help you? That's a good thing to ask. Another one is, did you go too crazy? Did you go full Ariana Grande and now you're 80 pounds and not eating anything? That's another one, because semaglutide also suppresses desire in general. And so there might be a lot of other things that are going on in your life that's not just food related, that, you're just not interested in anything that gives you pleasure. I suppose that could potentially happen too. All these things are worthy of analysis. But on the surface, when somebody says, even in an ad says, well, I did this and it made me happy, you didn't do it right. You're not allowed, is the message you got. Now, when I mentioned this to the Narrative Reflections crowd, it was not received well at all. Probably because I'm a male. This does not apply to me, the pressures that women receive. I would say that's not quite true. Fight Club, in the movie, they're looking at a Calvin Klein ad. It says, that what a man's supposed to look like? It is 0% body fat, is otter form, And then in that scene, a dude that really looks like a real man, so to speak, this big troglodyte shoves him out of the way. He's like, excuse me, and then they end up fighting each other in the club. We're being told something else too. And if you go back to the 60s and you look at the standards of beauty in Hollywood back then, you had Marilyn Monroe and you had guys like William Shatner and Charlton Heston. Now Charlton Heston looks pretty good. He's got some lean muscle. He's not a fat man, but he's no Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth, when he trained for Thor, he could only maintain that body shape for about 4 days. He was water deprived. He had worked out like crazy to get that big, and then they starved him of water so that the skin would recede against his muscles, and he could only stay that way for a few days. They had to film him real fast before he finally went to pot. And in fact, one of the movies, he let it all go and made it a point in that movie. Look, I'm Thor. I let it all go. Right. To me, a joke, because he's like, I can't live up to this standard. It's out of control. I can't do this. So it is a little disingenuous to say only women are hit with this too, because we're being shown guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything else back in the 80s, where you have to be really big and really muscular, where you have to be thin and svelte, right? Whereas Charlton Heston, he was healthy. He was a dude, though. Right alongside someone like Marilyn Monroe, 36, 24, 36. She had an hourglass figure. She looked great, you know. Now, of course, you've got the Columbia. You watch over the ages as the Columbia girl, the one that holds the torch at the beginning of the movie, she just gets thinner and thinner and thinner until she's just a robe, just a head on a robe. There's nothing underneath it, just a skeleton under there. So I get it. I do. We're all faced with it, right? We all want to be a little thinner. I think that's kind of true. Not everyone, I suppose, and no one should have to be, but I don't think anyone says to themselves, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind losing a few pounds. Very few people, unless they're workout queens or kings. Now, my angle, though, has nothing to do with weight loss. My angle has to do with my own hormone imbalance, which is testosterone. Okay. Now, for whatever reason, once I crossed the late 20s, early 30s, my body was not producing enough testosterone. Okay. It was below, there's a threshold of what you should have in your bloodstream, and it just kept dipping lower and lower and lower until it started to ride that line and it started to go below. Now, of course, you don't want that because for men, if your testosterone is too low, it can affect your mood. It affects your body's health and your ability to grow muscle and all those other things, right? And it's not good to be too high because then you start having acne and heart issues and all that other stuff, and cholesterol. So there's a range. Okay, women also have a range of testosterone, but it's different than men for obvious reasons. And it's much more impactful if we don't have the right amount of testosterone in our body. So I started to fight it. What do I need to do to fight testosterone loss? Eat right and exercise is the big one. Lift is a big one. It's part of the reason why I started lifting. Lifting prompts your body to kick out human growth hormone, and it basically says you got to get bigger now. Whatever is going on, you're having to lift stuff. It's called programming, strength programming. So your body gets, as your muscles get torn up, they're called micro tears, and you get delayed onset muscle soreness as you're lifting and all that stuff. You tear all these bits of muscle, and the two things that are happening, one is that those tears have to be repaired by our body. So there's all this message, all this hormone message that your body sends in. I gotta repair this stuff, and that prompts the body to fetch various bits of protein to decompile proteins and to start building that muscle back. And it also starts stretching out the muscle belly. That's the slow part of growing muscle, is that you have these belly. Same thing with your tendons. Anytime you're stretching, you can overdo it very quickly. You have to take it slow, take it slow, take it slow. Let the body, let it hurt it and then repair. Let it hurt it, repair, hurt it, repair. That is how the human body grows. So adipose fat tissue is also impactful to your body's ability to produce testosterone. The less you have, the more efficient your body is at producing testosterone, blah, blah, blah. Years I spent trying to get my testosterone levels up, and it helped. It kept pushing it back up a little bit over that low meter, but I was fighting an uphill battle. And so you start looking at supplementation, hormone replacement therapy, right? HRT, or TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. Testosterone is also used as a steroid in lifting. Okay, now it's not Diagonal, it's not Wistrol, it's not these things that these guys. Trenzadone, I think, is one of them, where you get these big poofy muscles. You see those guys or whatever. It's not like that, right? Some of that stuff, yeah, okay. Even then, right? People who are really into that stuff, who are very educated on it. My first time I ever was challenged on my thought about hormones was a guy who was on the AM radio. I was driving into work, talking about human growth hormone, and he said the problem is you can live a long time. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady is my age. He looks fantastic for his age because he keeps himself supplemented with human growth hormone, and he works out and he eats right and all that other stuff. But human growth hormone is a big part of it, because human growth hormone is what your body sends out to repair, and you start producing less of it as you grow older. That's why you start to age and stuff. So you can fight it by supplementing with human growth hormone and keeping yourself at a level. But he said the guy on this radio show says the problem is twofold. One, in America, if one is good, two is better. And the problem with something like human growth hormone, and it's true of any hormone, you take twice as much, your body's going to freak out. Okay, so hey, I feel better, I feel younger, I'm going to take twice as much. That's how people work. And you can't do that. You're going to really hurt yourself if you do something like that. That's why it's a controlled substance. The second part is that you have to keep your levels constantly monitored. It means pricking your finger once or twice a day at least to maintain your levels. People don't have that level of dedication. Most people don't. You have to be very on it when you're doing supplementation with human growth hormone. And also what happens is your body stops kicking out as much as it normally would. That's the risk with any hormone. Body says, I don't need it. It starts to atrophy the things that start to create it. So people are against testosterone replacement therapy because, again, there's a right way to do it. You need to work out and exercise. But what happens if you can't do it? You can't get over the hill. You can't get over the hump. You're going to get judged by these people. They don't want you to do it. And again, very rarely are they the kind of people that are having the problem. Or they might have had the problem and this exercise regimen worked for them, or this program worked for them, or whatever. but it doesn't necessarily work for you. Everybody's different. And I finally read an argument. It was a long diatribe, but basically what he said was, if you tried it all, just join the dark side. Just start taking TRT, because what you're going to find is you don't have to work nearly as hard and you can have the results. Modern medicine allows you to be where you need to be and to just move on with your life. And if you've made the effort, go to your doctor and tell them how much you've made the effort and tell them you want to try this supplement. Most doctors, including mine, was open to it. How old are you? Mid 40s now, early 40s. And what have you done? I've worked out and exercised with crazy black belt karate, all that other stuff. I can't get my testosterone levels high enough. All right, let's try with you supplements and see how that works. We come in for every couple months for blood tests. Make sure you're in range. And it worked. My moods came up. My muscle growth was better. My energy was higher. All that other stuff, and among other things, you know, things that you want to have that I've been fighting for years. Now I just get to have them because my body just wasn't doing it for me. And so I argue in the same way that weight loss is the same thing. You got those 10, 15, 20 pounds that you just can't get off, that spare tire, whatever it is. Try this medicine out, see if it works. And it worked for you. God damn, I'm happy. I'm finally at this place that I wanted to be. Right? I saw a thing on plastic surgery many, many years ago. It was the guy who did Michael Jackson's plastic surgery originally. And he did not like what was happening to Michael Jackson at the time. He said there are two kinds of patients that come in for plastic surgery. One is like, I hate my nose. I've hated my nose since I've been beginning, blah, 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 right? Whatever. They have a very specific thing in mind that they don't like and they want fixed. He says, those are the patients I want. The patients I don't want are the ones that are like, I don't know. Maybe I should do something with my eyes. Like they don't know. If you don't know, don't get the plastic surgery. And it's the same thing with any of these things. You go in and says, I just want to be super thin, right? No, you should be thinking about a healthy weight, and maybe you've tried and it hasn't worked out, right? I think that's a fair assessment. But at the same time, don't deny that person if they're like, I just can't get over this hump, man. I can't do it. And it's making me miserable. I want to lose these 15 pounds. I want to lose this spare tire, whatever it is the story is. And that was my argument. That was my argument. I am always leery of people making personal judgments about stuff like that doesn't really actually affect them if they took this shortcut, especially when it's someone that isn't living that, to be happy. Because I know what it's like to be judged for taking the shortcut to being happy with the results. But because of the subject matter was not received well, and I bowed out of that conversation before it got any hairier, because there are some people who are larger or whatever, and they feel the same way about these drugs, and that's okay, man. If you're happy with where you are, I would ask you, make sure you're healthy, you know, but no one's forcing you to take these drugs either, or to like it or whatever. But judging another person for that choice, just because it upsets your own sensibilities, is the wrong thing to do, is my argument. So I'm hoping, if anybody ever listens to this, that clarifies that position. I don't think it's right that the media pitches these image things to people at large at all. It's very unrealistic. We know this. The people on the TV screen, Chris Hemsworth being a prime example, they themselves can't even maintain that for any length of time. It's like holding your breath underwater to be in the shape that Chris Hemsworth was when he was playing Thor in the Avengers and stuff. And it's true of a lot of these actresses too. They have worked their asses off in whatever way to get to this perfect form that they take a picture of. And that is what you remember. And you always know how shocked you are when you see your favorite actor or musician or whatever 5 years later and like, oh my God, they're so old or they're so fat or whatever. Ben Affleck's a great one. That guy goes up and down all the time. Same with, oh God, what's his name? American Psycho guy. Uh, Not Chris Nolan, that's the director. You know what I'm talking about. Uh, these actors are paid, And they're put in front of a camera and paid billions of dollars to pitch an image. And I get that we're being advertised to. I do. But I just always say let's be careful when we're judging others about how they went about accomplishing a particular goal. If you're holding that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, okay? You know, anything from earning money to, you know, getting healthy to, you know, having children or whatever it is, just doesn't matter to you. Did they end up happy? Then don't begrudge them too much, man. Life is filled with misery. And if someone found a shortcut that you yourself may not be willing to do, or you don't have the problem yourself, don't make a value judgment about the means. Just consider the ends and how tough life is in general. And if people can find a little bit of happiness somewhere here or there, don't begrudge them too heavily. Worry about their health, yes. Worry about their well-being, but don't judge them for shortness of character because they didn't do it a particular way. That's all I have to say.